Welcome, everyone, and thanks for taking time to learn more about the AITC, the Artificial Intelligence and Technology Collaboratories, we also call the A2 Collective. I'm Albert Lee. I'm co-director of the A2 Coordinating Center. I'll be moderating today's webinar and share information about the 5th annual pilot competition. I'm delighted that we've got more than 200 registrants, not counting the AITC program rep. So it's a really good representation we have here today. Next slide, Scotia, please. Thanks. So just a quick program structure. So the collective is comprised of 3 collaboratories. We have one at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, the Mass AITC at University of Massachusetts in Amherst, and the Penn AI Tech Center at University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. I'm with the Coordinating Center, and we're located at Rosley & Associates. We're a science consulting firm in Chevy Chase, Maryland. We're about 6 miles from the NIA. And as the Coordinating Center, we help harmonize, coordinate, and communicate on behalf of the A2 Collective. Next slide, please. So this is just a quick run through of the agenda, which has 3 parts. So I'm making some remarks and give you a little bit overview of the collective and the competition. At 12:20 or thereabouts, we'll shift to a moderated panel discussion with the AITC leaders. So you'll get their perspectives on the kind of research that aligns with their center and what comprises strong application from their point of view. At about 12:40, we'll go into breakout sessions, and you on the webinar will get to ask specific questions of the AITC leaders directly. And just to let you know, so the welcoming remarks and the moderated panel discussion, those will be recorded, and we're going to post those on our A2 Collective YouTube channel in the next week or so. We're not planning to post the breakout session discussions. I mean, there may be very specific questions there, but if there are any recurring issues or questions that keep coming up, we'll make sure to post those and add those to our FAQs as needed. What I'd like to do now is just introduce you to Amanda DiBattista to welcome you all. Dr. Battista is an NIA program director in NIA's Division of Neuroscience. Amanda, you want to say hello?
Hi, thanks so much for the kind introduction and turning things over to me to welcome you on behalf of the National Institute on Aging. My name is Amanda DiBattista, and I'm a program director in the Division of Neuroscience at NIA. And really just want to welcome you and thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We really see this program as an important opportunity to apply AI and technology to improve the lives of older adults. And particularly, we also envision this program as addressing interests across the entirety of NIA, which includes 5 divisions that come together under our common goal to support and conduct research on aging, as well as diseases and conditions that can occur as we grow older, such as Alzheimer's disease and its related dementias. So what I want to do now is just very briefly take you through our 5 divisions one by one to give you a better idea of our priorities as an institute. First, our Division of Aging Biology supports molecular, cellular, and genetic research on the mechanisms of aging. And it also supports resource facilities that provide aged animals and baked tissues for use in aging research. Second, the Division of Behavioral and Social Research supports social, behavioral, psychological, and economic research on the processes of aging at both the individual and societal levels. Third, the Division of Geriatrics and Clinical Gerontology supports clinical and translational research on health and disease in the aged, and research on aging over the human lifespan, including its relationships to health outcomes. Fourth, the Division of Neuroscience fosters and supports research to further the understanding of neural and behavioral processes associated with the aging brain. And finally, the Division of Extramural Activities manages NIA's grants and training policies and procedures, but also our extramural training programs, career development programs, small business innovation research, and technology transfer programs. So as I mentioned before, we really view this program as highly relevant to the mission of NIA and to the interests of all 5 of our divisions. So I want to thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be here throughout the meeting today. And I want to welcome you all once more and thank you for your attendance. So I'll turn things back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. Scotia, next slide, please. And just to let you all know, we have a number of program representatives joining on the call today. They're listening and can weigh in. You can direct questions to. Obviously, you've just met Amanda at NIA. We've got representatives from each of the 3 AITCs at Hopkins, Mass, and Penn, and at the Coordinating Center. The folks in the orange font at the top are PIs of their respective centers, and the folks in the black font are their research and programmatic team. Okay, next slide, please. So, when we talk about or describe AITCs, we think about them in terms of the core services they offer, technical disciplines, and the key resources available there. So each of the collaboratories are designed to provide a set of common core services, like in the left-hand column. And the AITCs cover a wide range of disciplines as well, and they were set up this way intentionally. And then obviously they have a number of resources that are available there to help you with. So the core functions, disciplines, and resources, they can help on multiple levels. They can offer guidance on the design of interdisciplinary research projects, assembling the appropriate teams, or developing evaluation plans. The AITCs can also advise about human subjects research, or how to access unique and diverse patient populations. And they can even help arrange partnerships or introductions with private industry, VC or angels, healthcare organizations, or government agencies like the FDA. Next slide, please. So, on this slide, there are some key differences between the AITCs. And these are differences are important because you'll need to direct your application to a specific AITC, and you want to pick the one that best aligns with your research and your needs. So some offer some additional core services. For example, Hopkins has a data integration and quality core, whereas the Penn AI Tech team has an ethics and policy core. Others include additional disciplines, for example, business at Hopkins, and medical ethics and health policy at Penn. Some offer unique resources too, like Mass has a biomarker study lab and imaging facility. They've also got a sleep lab and a driving simulator. So they've got resources that are not just summarized here on this chart as well. They also have access to a lot of collaborating organizations like Harvard, Brigham and Women's Hospital, Mass General, Northeastern University, and other organizations. And Hopkins and Penn have business and venture development access, and others can provide even office space for startups. I know I'm going really fast here, but you can check each AITC website for all the details. A last point, if in your application you're thinking about collaborating with any of the institutional partners, it's important to let the AITC know this well in advance to give them the time to check for potential conflicts of interest between your team and the people that you want to participate with or collaborate with. The last point is that we also work closely with the NIA, Office of Small Business Research, as they look at our funding program as sort of a feeder pipeline for them. And they're happy to talk with you at any point, whether you've got an SBIR application pending or thinking about submitting one, but they're really, really helpful. Next slide, please. So, the 5th annual pilot award competition opened on December 2nd. You all know about it because you're here at this webinar today. Applications, as you know, are due by January 15th. We've got roughly $8 million to spend this year on new pilot awards in this competition. The pilot project should focus on AI and technology development, obviously targeted towards helping older Americans. And it's important that you see a path for commercialization or translation. Much of this competition this year is the same as in prior years. You can request a maximum of $200,000 in direct cost. And note, this is important, that funds are available on a reimbursement basis. So that means that you'll actually have to front some of the costs to, let's say, complete the first milestones. Then after the fact, you submit us an invoice and we reimburse you. So that's different than a grant program where you're given all the money up front. So just keep that in mind. We also have a 2-stage application process. And based at least on the last 2 rounds that we've done this, roughly about 40% of the round 1 applicants will be invited to submit a round 2. And of those round 2 applicants, about a third of them get funded. So, I don't know if history is going to be the same as this coming year, but historically, that's how the numbers have roughly worked out. And the last thing I'll just say that foreign entities are not allowed to apply, but foreign entities can be a collaborator. But if you are a collaborator, if you are awarded, you have to go through an NIH foreign clearance process before the award can be made. Next slide, Scotia. Okay, so in the last 4 years, we received more than 900 applications and selected about 130 winners. So our overall success rate, that's about 130 divided by 900, is about 14% success rate. This slide here is kind of an overview of all our awardees to date. So on the left, we have nationwide interest. Applications have come from 48 states, DC, Puerto Rico, and U.S. Virgin Islands. The awardees to date list primary locations in 23 states, DC and Puerto Rico. So it's not just at the AITC locations like Maryland, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania. We actually get a lot of applications from California. Now, about half the applicants are academic institutions and about half are non-academic. So I'm switching to the diagram on the right now. So this shows that actually about 70%, 72% of the awarded pilots actually had a partnership with an academic institution. And about 50% of the awards had some for-profit or business participation. And only about 28%, about a quarter of the awardees were from for-profit organizations that did not have an academic partner. I mean, this tells us that the value of academic participation is really important in the success of our competition. And just the other category represents nonprofits and other healthcare organizations. Next slide, Scotia, please. So here are the award evaluation criteria, which are similar to those for NIH applications. Obviously, significance of the problems is important. The approach is important. Not only this tells us how you're going to do things, but you have to give enough information in order for our evaluators to understand exactly how you're going to do it and how you're going to evaluate whether a milestone's been met. We look at the strength of the investigative team, the experience, and do you have all the right scientific bases covered? Innovation is important. Obviously, we're looking for innovative approaches, but innovation is not necessarily required. You may have figured out a well-established approach, but maybe not apply to this particular problem. But if you bring this approach to a new problem, you may have solved a big problem. Commercialization potential, obviously, very, very important. We realize that for a one-year award, $200,000 is not going to be enough to commercialize something or bring it to market. But we at least want you to address its potential. So the more you can say about potential markets, competitors, your IP position, thoughts about reimbursement or tracking financing, the more you can give us hints that you've thought about these areas, I think the better. And of course, we look at the research environment and resources available. Do you have the equipment and the resources and access to the right patient populations, et cetera, to get the job done? Next slide, Scotia. So we have a lot of key competition resources available on the A2 website, and we recommend that you really review these materials, including the full request for applications. That gives you a lot more details about what each AITC is looking for, and also has some important eligibility language. We have a lot of FAQs built up for the last 4 years, and please take a look at our timeline, because that not only tells you when the applications due, but also when you could expect to hear back from us and when, if you're lucky enough to get an award, what the timeline for that might be. Next slide, Scotia. So, as you're thinking about an application, I think there's some important considerations. So certainly in the funding structures I said before, funds are provided on a reimbursement basis, right? So you have to front the work to get to the first milestone, and then we reimburse you. The project team's invoice for expenses are set on a schedule by the AITC, so that's something you can work on at the time of award. You could invoice quarterly, monthly, or by milestone. Participant and IRB costs, I think these are important. If you're going to, there's a question, will these slides be available? I think, yes, they will be. Yeah, if your work's going to involve human subjects, I think it's important to make sure that you account for this in the budgeting, whether for costs for recruiting patients or participants or IRB submission costs. And the other thing is to let you know that for companies or organizations that don't have an IRB or don't have access to one, or if you're not partnering with someone that has their own IRB, you may be eligible to use our coordinating center's central IRB service. So something to keep in mind. For collaboration IP, if you're proposing to collaborate with others, you should begin negotiations about rights to any IP that's jointly developed, and do this as soon as possible. It's just one less thing to worry about or hold things up if an award's to be made. Award eligibility, I think this is particularly important. Obviously, projects must focus on novel technology development. In particular, applications that propose incremental enhancement or leverage a technology or platform that's been previously supported by an NIH Small Business Award are not going to be eligible in the fifth pilot competition. I know I said that kind of quickly, but there's details about that in the request for applications document. And if you have questions about any of this stuff, whether it's eligibility or anything else, you can always contact us here at the Coordinating Center. We're happy to talk more about it. Next slide, please. That's the end of my remarks. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move to the 20-minute moderated panel discussion with the AITC leaders. I know we're a little bit ahead of schedule, but actually that's good. I'm actually hoping that we can give you more time in the breakout sessions, which follows after the moderated panel, give you a chance to ask your specific questions to the AITC leaders. Okay, and I think we can go the next slide. So these will be the panelists that you'll be hearing from in our moderated panel. I'll be posing a few questions and they'll be answering. And this moderated panel discussion will go for about 20 minutes. Okay. So then I think you see what everybody looks like. And I think then I'll just start asking questions. So I think we'll stop sharing this and then you can see as people decide to respond. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a few questions, and what I'll do is I'll ask each representative from the AITC to respond. If you could answer in about 2 minutes, I think that would be great because we'll be able to get through more questions and be able to hear from all the AITCs. Okay. All right. So the first question, can you describe the range of projects your AITC is interested in for this competition and highlight any particular areas of interest, whether it's in terms of AI technology development, aging or ADRD, or stage of technology developments? And someone want to go first?
I can start, and maybe Rama, you can chime. This is Peter Abadir from the Hopkins Artificial Intelligence and Technology Collaboratory for Aging Research. And one of the interesting, I'm a geriatrician, I'm a clinician scientist, and one of the interesting things about aging is that it's not a disease specific. It's focused more on the functional elements of aging. So physical and cognitive decline that comes with aging. Sometimes the diseases will happen anyway, that hypertension, Parkinsonian, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So technologies, devices that aids in independence in older adults are the range of devices and technologies that we're looking for. It doesn't mean that we're not interested in disease-specific technologies, but the more the ones that focus on that independence are the ones that would be more interesting to our AITC. Specifically, also a certain area of emphasis that I want everybody to know about. We have been more and more interested in the biology of aging, looking at hallmarks of aging. Geroscience, molecular changes that come with aging, mitochondrial dysfunction, chronic inflammation, etc., using large omics and machine learning technologies to come up with predictors for that functional cognitive aging decline that you see in our older adults. And I'll pass it to Rama to chime in with any other thoughts.
I think very quickly, for the last year or so, there has been a lot of interest in building large foundation models. And for small companies, it's somewhat difficult to do what Meta and OpenAI do. But there are enough open source models available if we can look at adapting it to problems in ADRD and healthy aging. That would be also of interest to us.
Thanks, Rama. Deepak or George, you want to answer for your AITC?
Yeah, I think what Peter and Rama said are similar to what our interests are as well. I will say just a couple of things is in terms of mass AITC. So our interest, so we do have one particular interest in sort of aging at home and supporting aging at home through technologies and AI methods. So at-home monitoring, connecting older adults, caregivers, clinicians. We are also obviously interested in computational biology, biology for AI, multi-scale data analysis, AI for identifying biomarkers, drug discovery, and so on. So pretty broad areas as others have mentioned.
Thanks. And just to remind people, so Peter and Rama were from the Hopkins AITC, Deepak is from the Mass AITC, and George is from the Penn AITC. Go ahead, George.
I'm George Demiris from the University of Pennsylvania, and I would just add, similar to what Peter, Rama, and Deepak mentioned, that we look at the broad spectrum in terms of aging, and in terms of the settings, we encompass research that takes place in the home, in community settings, at the bedside, in clinical settings, across the continuum of care. And as Deepak mentioned, not only targeting older adults, but also inclusive of formal and informal caregivers, family members, supporting processes of care, outcomes of care, supporting decision-making. I think it's, when we think about the technologies, there's not a specific priority when it comes to a specific approach for hardware or software, but rather the innovation that comes from using AI and other technologies to advance aging.
Thanks, George. Okay, the next question. So what are the key factors you're looking for in a strong round one application? And how do those signals vary depending on the applicant's current stage of technology or commercial development? Do you have any recommendations for how applicants can maximize their chances of success with the project statement or the proposed team? Someone want to start first?
Yeah, I can go. So I think in terms of, I think there's probably two main categories I would look at. One is the technical elements, and the other is structure and feasibility of the study itself. So in terms of the technical aspects, obviously, one thing that we are looking for is clear innovation, whether it's on the AI, machine learning, technology side. So the methodology is well defined. There's some preliminary data, at least feasibility in terms of execution, and sort of articulating sort of the specific technical contributions and innovation is something that we're looking for. In terms of feasibility, obviously, in a 1 year study, it's really important to demonstrate that this is actually feasible in a study. So if the applicant is in very early stages and they haven't developed the actual product and they can't run a study, that would make it very challenging to execute. And so that often is the reason why a 1 year pilot project can take 3, 4, right? A significant amount of time, and we don't have that kind of luxury. So I think it's really important to show feasibility, and for that to happen, it's important to have these validation partnerships already in place. So, for example, if if there needs to be a clinical site, that needs to be in place before starting, before the application is actually submitted, and so the evaluation plan, the IR, you have to think through all of the aspects of how to execute a study in a reasonable time frame. Maybe I'll just mention a couple of things in terms of there are startups and non-academic types of led projects, and there's obviously academic-led projects. And I think for the startup cases, it's important to articulate what goes beyond a product. So just not a product pitch, but really sort of thinking about the research angle there and the innovation. So not just the pilot application shouldn't just be a product pitch. And so for academics, the translation potential is also important on the other side, right? So for academic-led projects, like how does this go beyond an academic sort of project to something that would actually make it to people's hands? I'll stop there.
Thanks.
The Hopkins.
Oh, sorry. There was just a question that came up in the chat, and you had mentioned, if people want to collaborate or form partnerships, should do this as soon as possible. But the question is, how do we identify collaborators from each AITC? Do you and the others want to just talk about that briefly?
Yeah, I think all of us have ways in which we, you can reach out to us for collaborations of various sorts. And I think it is, I do agree that it is really important to think through these ahead of time, well ahead of time if possible, because there's a number of different types of collaborations that are involved. It could be of the form of the clinical collaborations or the site for recruiting. It could be of the form of, you have a technology, you need particular ground truth in order to validate the technology. And so there's specific needs for a particular lab facility where you want to, you want to get the ground truth data, because machine learning needs not just data, but well-labeled data. And so that it requires specialized facilities oftentimes. And then there's just the technology, collaborations in terms of the machine learning expertise or device expertise or clinical expertise. So yes, we provide avenues for all of these, but of course we all have limited capacities. So reach out to us, but also think about these before you apply.
Hopkins site has a list of researchers interested in collaborating, and multiple links to resources inside the AITC that are available. In particular, we have a registry of patients who are willing to participate in studies, and the applicant should clearly state how AI tech will be used in the issue area of healthy aging, ADRD, that will be resolved or held. Please avoid sales pitch. These are going to be reviewed mostly by people in the field. And sometimes applications spend a lot of time about their past success and why, this is a big issue for aging. Most of those things are known. So emphasizing the science and technology would be good. And Deepak mentioned it's a feasibility study is the goal. So it's not a clinical trial. Peter, you want to add anything?
No, I totally agree with lots of what was mentioned. I just want to add a couple of things about finding a collaborator and making sure that that collaborator is actually the person you want to be working with. One of the things that we do very different in this center, the three centers, the MASS, PEN, and JH, is that we actually communicate before intra and post pilot awards, meaning that we will meet with you through videos. And I want to just use an example from the past that didn't go very well. There was a Hopkins collaborator was mentioned in the application. And when we met with both the PI and the Hopkins collaborator, it was very clear that there was no communication between the collaborator and the PI, which made it very difficult to rationalize how is this project is going to go forward without even that foundation of communication. This is what we're doing. This is your role. So it's not just about finding a name and putting it on the application, making sure that selected, talked with, and made sure that the expertise of the person you selected matches with the aims of the application. So that's what.
And also, there should be some reflection of that in the budget. That's one thing. And second thing is, they should familiarize themselves with human subject studies and IRB processes. Looks like that's always been a little bit challenging when small companies are involved. So in case if that's involved, please get familiarized with that.
If I could add, I think as Peter said, the pilot awardees get to receive mentoring from the different cores throughout their pilot and work with us closely as they develop and implement their project. There was a question in the chat if it's a requirement that the applicants have established collaboration or collaborators with each AITC before applying, and that is not a requirement. It is definitely an option. All three AITCs have a number of investigators who are part of the AITCs as well as affiliated departments that you can reach out to and explore how to collaborate. But it's not a requirement that you have a named collaborator from the AITC in your application. Even awardees who have their own team and are pretty much independent, they have their own resources, will still be receiving mentoring throughout the one-year pilot, even if they don't have formal collaborators from the respective AITC. And just to add quickly to the earlier question about the strong applications, as my colleagues said, we definitely want to see applications that will ultimately lead to something impactful that will change for the better lives of older adults and their families. So this needs to translate into the real world, whether it is through a commercialization plan or other ways to translate into clinical practice and regular use down the future, obviously not within the 1 year necessarily of the project. And when you think about partnership, I think what makes a strong application is one where the team reflects all the required areas of expertise. Sometimes you see an application with very strong technical skills, but not necessarily any clinical expertise represented in the team. Or similarly, sometimes you have very strong gerontological initiatives, but you may not have the right technical team on board. So trying to figure out how to build the right team, whether it is within the entity that's applying or through partnerships with the AITC, I think is important.
Can I add just one sentence, Albert, on ethics? Because I think this is really important also for startups and companies, that ethics, there will be an ethical evaluation of the application, and ethics and AI is becoming more and more important. And it's not just, you know, how you write things. Make sure that the ethical implications of the technology are discussed in the application, because there will be some, there were some applications that were rejected based on concerns for ethical, ethical application. So be careful with that.
Can I add one more?
Yeah.
Can I add one more point? So I think I wanted to mention that we do get a number of applications where the technology has already been developed or the methods have already been developed, and you're just doing a user study or a study to validate. So validation pilots in general are not something that we look for in the applications. So we really look for things that don't just involve validation of a existing developed product or application or method. There should be some methodological or technical advance as part of the pilot itself.
I'd like to add one point. We are not the final decision makers. We recommend, and it goes to NIA, and the program officer takes a very, very close look. In the past, we have seen the officer not accept proposals that have very, very small number of subjects, or if it is just a user interface sort of thing and so on. So he is actually looking, and he, of course, his team. They're looking for technology advances and things like that. So that is something to keep in mind. We recommend, and NIA can accept, or NIA can turn it down. But then we have to look for other.
Yep. The third question I'd like to pose to you all is beyond the strength of the proposed project and application materials, what are your top recommendations to help navigate the application and grant funding process efficiently and successfully, particularly for early career investigators or startup companies who may be new to NIH funding and new to clinical research?
I think small companies need to have somebody who has good experience with managing contracts. I think with Hopkins, if we are not familiar with the company, there are additional processes are in place. They have to do an evaluation about risk and things like this, so that can delay. So I'd also remember there are two units are involved here. NIA, so the policies of NIA in terms of how grants are awarded, as well as how Hopkins manages the subcontract, right? So there are two things involved, and so you need to have somebody who is really able to manage these contractual issues, so that there is not too much delay.
And
Yeah.
I would add to that we do work with our awardees, recognizing that our applicants and ultimately the awardees come from different backgrounds, some from academic institutions with extensive experience in terms of managing subcontracts, others who might be doing it for the first time. So we do provide some mentoring and guidance along the way. I think once the applicants have identified the right team, given that for some it might be the first experience with NIH funding, our cores work with the awardees to ensure that there is regulatory and otherwise compliance, ethics, reviews, and so forth. So there is a series of milestones and timeline requirements that are making sure that our awardees, as they are notified that they've been selected for the award, all the way to carrying out and implementing their project, are receiving that type of mentoring. I think it's a specific NIH priority that this mechanism does attract innovative solutions, even from entities that perhaps wouldn't have necessarily traditionally sought the NIH funding route. So we do have the infrastructure in all three AITCs to provide that mentoring for awardees who are doing this basically for the first time with NIH funding.
Yeah, I think all of the points that Rama and Georgia mentioned are correct. So I would echo that. We have a mentoring process as well. We assign mentors, and we have regular reporting, and we help the various pilots. But there are obviously, it's really important, as Rama said, to have a team with somebody who has experience with these kinds of projects. There's many possible reasons why something could be delayed. It could be the initial contracting itself, depending on the company and the risk and the familiarity of the company if it's a company with these kinds of granting processes. It could be the IRB, which often is a problem if there's less familiarity within the team with writing an IRB for these kinds of pilot studies. That could cause delays. So clinical partnerships or partnerships with somebody who is familiar with NIH grants would actually be very useful if you don't have them already. But other than that, I think it's just having realistic timelines, preparing ahead of time so that that this can be executed within a finite time frame. Because once the grant starts, it's really a year, and a year is very limited time. So it's really important to think ahead as to how to move the project forward in that short time frame.
I'm looking at the chat. There's a lot of things going on in here, but I've seen kind of a theme. There's a few questions about the review process or the evaluators. I think there's one question about what's the confidentiality like in these reviews, since they are putting forth new novel concepts. And I think there's also a question about who is reviewing sort of the commercialization potential aspects. Can you all talk about how the review is done and what kind of people you have and what processes are in place to ensure confidentiality?
Well, I think I think the review process itself is an interdisciplinary group. So we have people from all of the different aspects of, obviously the program itself is highly interdisciplinary. So you have AI experts, you have experts on the devices side or wearable technologies or whatever be the technologies used. You have geriatricians and you have neuroscience experts. So sleep, sort of behavioral scientists. So, we have a collection of experts who review these proposals, and we have an assignment process by which the proposals are assigned to a subset of these, depending on the nature of the proposal and the types of expertise needed to review them. So this is a pretty standard review process, in terms of similar to NIA or other federal agency review processes. Confidentiality-wise, I think it's a program-wide. We have to share these applications with with the team members, and the only thing I will say is these are short proposals, so it's I'm not sure entirely to what degree extremely the details that you might want to protect. I'm not sure you need to necessarily put all of the information within the proposals. I think there needs to be enough for us to review, and enough to have trust in the fact that what you're talking about in terms of the proposal itself. But I think all of it's a short proposal. I don't expect that you can provide all the details of your technology inside these proposals.
Thanks, Deepak. Rather than let everyone else chime in on this, I have one last question. I want to just get a real quick answer from each of you before we move into the breakouts. But if people want to talk directly with the AITCs about their project, how's the best way to get in touch with your AITC? Can you just let people know what's the best way?
For Hopkins, they should get in touch with our coordinator, Ms. Ann Waker, and the email is there. Ann will then contact us and kind of try to match, and we will find who is the best person that you can collaborate with. I think the earlier you start, the better your application looks like. As I said before, keep in mind, they don't come free. So you have to provide some amount of support, and that is something between you and the person who you are trying to recruit as a collaborator.
How about a pen, George?
So at Penn, you can email us at the PennAITech at nursing.upenn.edu contact information, where our project managers will get you in touch. We will, with our different investigators, we will also be holding office hours. So if you have specific questions about your project or are not sure about aspects of the application, please feel free to sign up for one of these office hours where you will get to meet with our leads from the various cores of PennAITech. And then throughout the process, you can email us, and I will put I think the website is on the chat, but I will put the information there as well. You can email us either for general questions or if you need help discussing a specific idea.
Thanks, George. And Deepak at
Yeah.
Mass?
Similar, we have, I think if you look at the chat, there is the contact information for each AITC. In our case, there's a form that you submit, and it goes to a few of the administrative staff, and then depending on what the need is and what the question is, one of us will get in touch with them. So this is the Airtable link that's in the chat.
Great. All right. Well, thank you all for serving on the panel. Really appreciate it.